Alright. I am going to sound like I am zooted as fuck. But I need to explain to you guys how my brain works. So, Planetary Lullabye is a story I wrote a few years ago now. It was like late 2022, early 2023. It is one of the first chronological stories of the 12-sided mirror. And it's also very important for understanding a lot of base cosmology of the 12-sided mirror. So before I even get into the story itself, I need to explain to you guys some of the cosmology of the 12-sided mirror. Alright? Okay? Are you following me here? So I think the first thing I need to do is I need to explain the character of Tavalef. Tavalef is my attempt to have a very respectful portrayal of the Christian God. This character is heavily based on God. He's kind of like Aslan in a way, where he represents something real. But he's still a character in this like fictional story, so it's like but also this is kind of a meta narrative as well. So it makes things complicated. I'll try to explain. I will explain that Tavalef does exist in a sort of triune nature. The thundering corresponds to the Father, the speaking corresponds to the Son, and the whispering corresponds to the Holy Spirit. So, in a sense, the whispering is implied to be doing things in the background of every series, and it's not fully explained everything that's being done. The speaking is a character who's going to appear very rarely. I actually have a visual for the speaking. I might as well show you guys like a visual of the speaking. Yeah, right. Yeah. This is a visual of the speaking. This is a character that is going to appear very rarely in the 12-sided mirror. Planetary Lullabye is one of these, so we might get into that a little later. And basically, when the speaking, you need to be quiet and listen because the speaking is speaking. So, you can think of the cosmology of Planetary Lullabye kind of in terms of layers of reality, for lack of a better term. Tavalef is the foundation for reality. And then the first layer of reality would be like real life heaven. The second layer of reality would be our like physical world, like the world we live in. The third layer would be a place called the Hall of King. And this is a rather large palace that sort of exists between reality and fiction. And then the layer after that is fiction, where the 12-sided mirror takes place. The 12 chambers of the 12-sided mirror are within the realm of fiction. I might go ahead and read to you, like I'm not just gonna read Planetary Lullabye to you, but I might read like the first part of the story to sort of provide a visual for you. Soul of moon, hear my voice, bring my voice. As I enter your gate, I tell you the quest of my friends. Let the record keeper keep these words and the words to come after. Chambers of reality layered in glass, that which some have called glass, that is, whatever it may be. Chambers reaching out in forearms of three, at the center and around a palace larger in size than all of the chambers multiplied by themselves, and yet too small to house the one it was built for. 12 chambers of glass orbit the great halls, their slumberings in straight lines, their movements in wake, never listing too far to escape their orbit. Many souls wait in dreamless slumber for their time to awake, souls of 12 parts, that if one may be lost too soon, the others could save it from such a fate, though some parts never would be lost, and some would be lost anyway. A part of each soul would be kept in one of the 12 chambers, as their birthplace. They could travel and mingle among the chambers if they pleased, unless the tunnels between each chamber were blocked or made unreachable. And when he, the great Tavalef, saw in the time before time the worlds he would create, he spoke them into existence, and then it was. These are the chambers of the 12-sided mirror. Ru, Sim, Lev, Jud, Dan, Naf, Ga, Ash, Iz, Zeb, Joe, and Benj. Okay, so let's unpack all that. Alright, so you might have noticed this symbol. This is the symbol which represents the planetary lullaby. This entire symbol represents the palace known as the Hall of King, which is a massive palace which is larger than the universe of the 12-sided mirror. These 3 squares at either side of like this big square, these represent the different chambers. The 12 chambers in which the 4 classifications of species live. And these 4 classifications of species are as follows. You have the Bereshi, which are like the, kind of like the angels of the 12-sided mirror. They're like guardians and stuff. And they're made out of the substance called will, which we will explain in a minute. Then you have sapiens. These are humans, but they are not only humans. They are also intelligent alien species that, can communicate with humans and stuff like that. Then you have the crawlers. And the crawlers are like animals, plants, bacteria, fungus, that sort of thing. It's kind of the miscellaneous category. And then you have planetoids. And this includes stars, planets, and moons. Because in this story, every star, planet, and moon is a sentient, living creature. Let's talk about that, shall we? So, I need to explain to you the 7 elements of the 12-sided mirror. I will explain these to you. This shouldn't be too hard. You have solid, which corresponds to earth, liquid, which corresponds to water, gas, which corresponds to air, plasma, which corresponds to fire, and then you have energy. This would be stuff like light and heat and sound waves and stuff. Then you have will. This is the substance which Bereshi are made of. Part of sapien is made of this as well. This is like soul energy, I guess I could call it. And then there is bind, and this is a nice mix of all of the other elements put together. And this is what the walls of each chamber are made out of. You also have antimatter. Some of the stuff on the right we'll explain a little bit later. Basically, when antimatter meets its corresponding matter element, it creates a massive explosion. So now, I will show you what the chambers of reality look like. So these are the chambers of reality. And you might notice that every single one looks like a person. You have Rue, you've got Sim, Lev, Judd, Dan, Naf, Ga, Ash, Iz, Zeb, Joe, and Benj. They look like friendly fellas, don't they? I will now proceed to explain every single part of these characters in detail. So instead of up, you have Tav. This is the Tav of the chamber. Instead of south, you have Aleph. This is the Aleph of the chamber. One side's Alpha, the other side's Omega. And this is your compass. You have Tav, you have Aleph, you have Alpha, and you have Omega. Pretty neat compass, eh? Well, let's explain what's going on inside of the body of this creature. You may draw some parallels to Bionicle, in the sense that a massive freaking living thing just has like an entire universe inside of it. These are all the stars and all the galaxies and stuff. I would like to point out the distinct weapon-shaped object that each of these chambers is holding. Each of them are strapped and ready for battle. What is this weapon which each of these characters are holding? Well, if the body contains the stars and galaxies and matter and stuff, the weapon contains the antimatter. It contains antimatter galaxies, antimatter planets, antimatter all sorts of stuff. It also includes black holes. Because all the stars are living, when it is time for a star to die of old age, what happens? Well, there's a certain Bereshi living within the antimatter segment of each chamber. There's a special Bereshi. The Bereshi are sort of like the angels and are composed of will. If I can find him. Here you have Rishi the Rock Weaver. Rishi the Rock Weaver lives in the middle of the antimatter segment of the chambers. And he does two things. Number one, he weaves together rocks, which later become stars and planets and stuff. Also, what he does is he is able to focus his will, his power, with any given Arch-Bereshi. Arch-Bereshis being the guardians of stars in the 12-sided mirror. And what will happen during a star funeral is that the star will start to die, And the Bereshi will recite the Planetary Lullabye, a 4-part series which, in the language they speak, they do not understand what they're saying when they say it. But basically, within the language they speak, it rhymes. So it's like a big song that they sing at the funeral of a planet. I'm gonna drop the whole. I don't think it was that funny anyway. I'm gonna drop the whole. I am very nervous talking about this thing because this is such a big concept to talk about. I'm gonna drop that. That wasn't that funny. Basically, when the star reach old age, the Rockweaver will link their will to an Archbereshi and form what is called a Death Gate. I don't remember what it was called. I don't remember what it was called. They will form what is called a Death Gate, and basically, like, they'll push the dying star through the Death Gate while reciting the Planetary Lullabye in a language they don't understand, but it rhymes, so it sounds cool. And then what will happen is that dying star will then appear in the this sort of antimatter segment as sort of like the corpses of stars. As such, this segment of the chamber is called the Star Graveyard. Okay. Now that I've explained the Star Graveyard, I need to explain the rest of this creature. So, you may notice the purple lines moving like to and from each of these chambers. These are basically gateways, these are portals, these are whatever. They basically just, and like they're all connected to each other. Like each of these chambers is connected to one another. These basically represent like pathways that people like move through to get from like one planet to another through things called mirror gates. So like mirror gates are basic portals, and then like the Death Gate is the thing that they send a star through. I'll have to explain like the other portals later on. Now you may notice that these things each have like one open eye and one closed eye. Okay, so the open eye is the greater light, and it is called the moon. The closed eye is the lesser light and is called Sun. These stars are so big that you can see them if you're all the way down here, right? You can just kind of like see them because they're that big. The greater light produces a lot of light, whereas the lesser light produces a lot of heat. So like these are two very important stars. Another very important star in this structure is this one, sort of like at the heart area. This is the star of Theswood, and each chamber has a star of Theswood. Theswood is like a super important star that's kind of like the size like the other stars. It's a little inconspicuous, but it's actually one of the most important stars in the body, because much like the heart moves blood from like one organ of the body to another, Theswood moves light from one star to like another star. And so it's very integral to like a chamber having any way to see. And like it's also integral to like the greater light and lesser light up here. It's very important. It's like a vital organ of the chamber. Now, I did explain briefly that the Bereshi are sort of like angels, and they guard stars and planets and also humans and stuff. So these guys can get pretty big. I will have to explain some of the more important Bereshi to the series. So, Soul. This is Soul of Moon. Soul of Moon is the guardian of the greater light. And an interesting thing about this guy has all of the information of what was and will be, of which Tavalef permits the denizens of the 12-sided mirror to know. This guy is sort of meant to see like both past and like future events, and like sort of see so many of them. There are some things which he is not permitted to know, and there are also some things that can like affect this guy's vision. So like he's not omnipotent. Like if Tavalef just chooses that this guy will not know something, this guy will not know something. And the other thing is that like there are certain things that this guy can't see through. So like, you know how Superman can't see through lead. This guy can't see through black plasma, basically. So it's not like an overpowered, omnipotent, like he knows everything sort of deal. Like, even some stuff which is permitted to know, he doesn't know because people just keep putting black plasma everywhere. It's a very limited power. Basically, one of his eyes is a lapis eye, which sees the past, and his other eye is an emerald eye, which sees the future. So, there's that. His friend is named Luna. This is Luna, the guardian of the lesser light. This is Luna of Soon. I know. Okay. So, this is the record keeper. This is a character which keeps records of the things which Soul of Moon has seen in the past. So she keeps records. So, like, say Soul takes out his lapis eye, which he does in the story, and he gives it to Luna at some point in the story. And she uses that to keep records at some point in the story. That's kind of what she does. And they also have this other friend named Thela. I have to explain the time gate. This guy is technically the guardian of the time gate. But Soul and Luna can kind of like take care of watching the time gate if they need to. So really what Thela does is he's sort of like their friend. He kind of exists as like a friend between the two of them. And he's this big, stoic, like, good lion. And Soul gives Thela the Emerald Eye, which can see the future. And so Thela is very important in, like, the prophetic chain of narration, right? Sort of, chain of... I don't think chain of narration is the right word. But no, like, the chain of prophecy. So basically, the chain of prophecy goes... Tavalef just knows everything. Soul knows what Tavalef has allowed Soul to know. Thela knows what Soul has provided to Thela through the use of the Emerald Eye. Thela gives that to the main Bereshi messenger of the Millennium, whoever that ends up being. That main Bereshi messenger then takes that message to the Arch Bereshi of Theswid, which is usually Achelim. And then Achelim takes that message to, like, the other star systems and stuff, and it just kind of goes from there. I need to explain to you what mirror parts of one's soul are. So, what mirror parts of a denizen's soul are is that each, like, sapien, Bereshi, planetoid, and crawler has 12 bodies per one soul. And you can kind of think of this as like the multiverse if there were only 12 of them. And so, like, there's like 12 souls, 12 Lunas, 12 Thelas, 12 Achillums, 12 Irelefs, and we'll get into some of these characters later. Like, there's 12 of each of these characters. Sometimes they don't look like each other. Like, sometimes they just, like, look entirely different. But, like, Sol, Luna, and Thela, these are, like, the main ones that have a very, like, strong connection to their other mirror parts. Tavalef doesn't have mirror parts because he's kind of outside this construct of the 12-sided mirrors. So, yeah, basically that's it. It's like the multiverse, but there's only 12 of them. So now I need to explain to you what the time gate actually is. Okay, so the time gate. Oh my gosh. So the time gate is the primary form of, like, time travel in the 12-sided mirror universe. You can only time travel if you have obsidian that specifically came from the time gate. You have to have obsidian from the time gate in order to make a time, in order to make, like, a mini time gate. The time gate just kind of spawned into existence one day. So, like, Sol and Luna, they were up here in like, the place of, like, the two lights. And suddenly the time gate just exists now. Now, out of the time gate comes, like, first out of the time gate comes 7 evil gemstones. They're like 7 evil gemstones, like, rah, 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 rah. And this is only in one of the chambers. I'm not sure which chamber. I don't recall which chamber off the top of my head. But it's like one of the chambers. And so those 7 evil gemstones come out. Then a big heckin' dragon called Velthamir comes out after them. And they're like chasing them, like, row, 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 row. And they're like Velthamir, like, chases them away. The massive dragon. And then after Velthamir leaves and, like, he stops roaring, a good gemstone comes through the portal. And this gemstone actually comes through, like, all the 12 portals. And the reason it does this is because that gemstone, those 12 gemstones, actually, because it's like in each 12 of the chambers, one per chamber, is actually, I have a pretty good visual of this. Planetary Lullabye. I gotta go down to, yeah, this one. Because this guy, Soul of Moon, went through the time gate, and he became this gemstone called Soul of Moon. And so, like, Soul of Moon, he's, like, through the portal now, and then, like, Soul of Moon sees Soul of Moon. So Soul of Moon grabs Soul of Moon and hands it to Luna of Soon. And tells Luna of Soon, go hide Soul of Moon in, like, 12 different places, one per chamber. And, like, hide them away from the Ubermesh, so that, like, when the time comes, a team of, like, very, very devout and good and, like, noble Bereshi will come around and, like, try and, like, find all of them before the Ubermesh does. You know, so the Ubermesh don't just storm the place of the two great lights, because Because they need to be like scattered around and like hidden, right? So that's Planetary Lullabye does become a MacGuffin quest after a certain point in the story. Um, so that's kind of what the place of the Two Great Lights is, and also another thing about the place of the Two Great Lights. I feel like I should explain this. This place of the Two Great Lights is like. So I explained how star funerals work. How do planet funerals work? Well, planet funerals work because every single planet. So, like, this is something the Rockweaver puts into it. Because the Rockweaver makes rocks which turn into planets and stars. Moons are kind of like offsprings of planets. But the rocks become planets, and they can rarely become stars, but they usually become planets. And so, like, a rock woven by the Rockweaver will become a planet. And each planet is decked out with a handy-dandy core gate. And what a core gate is this massive ring of obsidian. The massive ring of obsidian. And once you turn a core gate, it will sort of like expand without breaking the opening of the portal. It will expand in such a way that it won't break the opening of the portal. And it will sort of like travel past like the core of the planet, because the sentience of a planet is stored in its core. So you basically move the core. It doesn't have its crust anymore, but you move the core to this place of the Two Great Lights. And they actually enter in through the time gate. And see, what happens is they come in and they start circling the greater light. Then they go back through the time gate and they start circling the lesser light. But as they circle the lesser light, they're sort of like covered in like a gemstone. And it comes back around here, and then like it removes the gemstone and it goes around the greater light. And it comes back in and then moves around the lesser light. And sort of like stuff like that. So it's like it gets light from here, then it goes in like a hibernation cycle where it's like encased in crystal and it's still kept warm by this. Then it's like awake and it goes through here, and then it's asleep and it goes through here, and it's awake and it goes through here, and it's asleep and it goes through here, and it just keeps doing that forever and ever and ever. And so like Sol and Luna are also watching over like these small planets which come through at their funerals. And that's kind of why the evil gems are gems, and why Soul of Moon became gems. Yeah. Okay. So, and that's also kind of why Luna and Thela are able to hold on to Soul's eyeballs even though they're in his face, is because that's just Soul from the future. And he just came back and he's like encased in emerald. And it just kind of like symbolically corresponds to his eyes, the emerald and lapis ones. So you got the 7 evil gems in like one chamber, and then you got the good Soul of Moon and like the 12 others. I'm not going to be able to explain the series to you, am I? I'm not going to be able to explain this series to you guys. I don't think I'm going to be able to explain this series to you guys. I feel like the last thing I need to explain about the cosmology of the chambers is that although Thela is technically like the guardian of the time gate, he also sometimes goes off by himself to like this void and like sort of the right hand of each chamber. And he goes here because this is sort of like the meeting place for when he has to give a prophecy to someone, right? So like he can be here, he can be here. He spends kind of equal time in both places. But throughout Planetary Lullabye, he's mostly just like in this segment. Okay. So that's the cosmology. I hope that made sense. Just think about it as the multiverse, but there's 12 of them. All of the planets are alive, and the angels are powerful enough to like keep guard over each of them, like one each, and like they move them during the funerals to like either here or here, like either here or here for planets, here for stars, and then the Rockweaver's like in here somewhere too. You got all that? Good. Because now we gotta explain so much more of that as well. Okay, so let me introduce you to some of the important Bereshi early on. So this is Achelim. His name is an anagram of Michael, and he is the Arch Bereshi, and Arch Bereshi is the guardian of a star, as opposed to a Planetary Bereshi, which is guardian of a planet. So this is an Arch Bereshi. He's the guardian of a star. He is the guardian of Theswid. Now, Achelim is usually the guardian of Theswid in like each chamber. I don't know if it's like a different character for like each Theswid. But yeah, Achelim is the guardian of Theswid in each chamber. And Achelim's a pretty wise dude. He's not just gonna, because like the way mirror gates work is it has to be through the will of a Bereshi. It's got to be through a will of a Bereshi that a mirror gate is formed. And if there's like a powerful Bereshi in a place that you're trying to get to, and this Bereshi doesn't want you to get there, they just won't let you. And like Achelim, he's a pretty strong dude. It'd take a lot to overpower Achelim's will. So if he doesn't want someone to show up in Theswid, he can just stop people from appearing in Theswid. If like he wants. Unless it's like a super powerful Ubermish. I will maybe briefly explain how will works amongst the Bereshi. Will works amongst the Bereshi as follows. Will is kind of the substance that they are made out of. And their will can increase or decrease based on certain things. Number one is that Tavalef can just decide that someone gets more will. If Tavalef decides that you get 10,000 will, you get 10,000 will. That's a big way it can happen. Another big way it can happen is that another Bereshi can lend you their will. They can like send some of their will towards you, and you get some of their will now. Another way it can happen is that a Bereshi can be close to the object they are set to guard. So, for example, an Arch Bereshi will be most powerful when they are by the star they are guarding. If they are away from the star, they'd probably have more so the will of like a Planetary Bereshi. Or even less than that if it's been a while since they've been away from their star. A Planetary Bereshi will be most powerful near the planet. But if they're away from the planet, well, maybe they'd be more like a giant in scale. They'd still be taller than most sapiens, but I mean, they'd be significantly decreased in power if they're away from their planet. Another thing that can happen is that you can gain will from singing. Like if someone sings to you, you can get will from that. So like there's a big thing, the planets are alive. The soundtrack of the 12-sided mirror is just planets singing. So the planet can send you music and strengthen your will. So that can happen. Another thing that can happen, and this is like this last one is the evil one. This is the one that only the Ubermesh engage in. Another way you can gain will is if like you eat someone else's will. And this is done through sapien sacrifice. In Planetary Lullabye, there are a few examples of sapien sacrifice. And what happens is that they put sapiens in obsidian cubes. They put them on like these little burner things in front of like a statue of like a different Ubermesh, and like they burn it, and then that's that. The Ubermesh are basically evil Bereshi. An evil Bereshi is called an Ubermesh. Ubermesh! I'm gonna say it like Cookie Crisp. Okay. I'm very tired when I'm recording this, by the way, so... If I sound tired, it's because I am. I should also explain that sometimes planets have a different structure. So okay, so this is like a diagram of a planet. Sometimes a planet will have a mantle. This is like a mantle of like molten metal or whatever mantles are made out of. I'll have the core gate here, which will extend the core to where it needs to go. And it's got an eyeball. Yeah, all the planets have eyeballs. Well, most of them, at least. But then sometimes you'll have a planet which is like this. This is a hollow planet with like pillars that sort of like extend from its core and sort of like lift up the crust. And when it's a void planet, it's got blood in it. There's a void planet that's got blood. Now, these planets can still have volcanoes sometimes, and that's because of, like, sometimes a mirror gate can form, like, in the mantle of another world and then, like, set up a volcano on like, a void world. So it's, like, that can happen. So, like, these ones have, like, blood flowing around in them. It's like, pure blood is, like, pure... bless you. Sick blood is like it's sin if you touch it, and so like sick blood will come up to the surface if like the planet is like poked too heavily, and then pure blood will come out if like you just talk to the planet, and the planet's like, oh, you want some pure blood? Oh, here's some pure blood, and like this stuff is actually really good if you touch it. This is like healing. It's like this is like sin, and this is like healing. Right? Right. So, I don't actually have an internal structure of a star. But here's the eyes of the star of Theswood and the star of Odotham. Ooh. I wonder what Odotham is. Oh, hey, look, here's the Rock Weaver and his nest gate, which he sends rocks through to the Arch Bereshi, so they can set up what's called trial setting. So, I'll explain what trial setting is in a minute. So, the Trial of the Rock. This is a good place to start our actual discussion of the Planetary Lullabye story. One of the earliest plot points in Planetary Lullabye is that, hang on, if I can find him. He's in a different playlist. Hang on. One of the earliest plot points in Planetary Lullabye is this guy, Agribel. This is an anagram of Gabriel. This is one of the main characters of Planetary Lullabye. And what he does is he wants to become a planetary Bereshi, a guardian of a planet, just like his good friend Doggo Nui. And Doggo Nui is like an interesting example of a Bereshi that actually like changes his form throughout the story. So like this is like max power Doggo Nui. But then like this is more like what Doggo Nui looks like throughout the series. He's like this little dog, and he like choose to be like a different dog depending on the chapter. But like the main consistent element of him is that he always has 7 tails. So Agribel and Doggo Nui are like best friends, and like Doggo Nui got to be like a planetary Bereshi, and now Agribel wants to be a planetary Bereshi. So he goes to Achelem and the Chamber of Lev. I feel like the Chamber of Ru and the Chamber of Lev are the main ones you need to know for Planetary Lullabye. The rest of these are important, but Lev and Ru are the main 2 you need to remember. So Agribel goes to Achelem in the Chamber of Lev, and he says, "Yo, Achi, I like this planet stuff. Can I do it? Can I like take care of a planet?" And Achelem's like, "Okay, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this rock. The Rock Weaver gave me this rock. Rishi the Rock Weaver, he gave me this rock, and he said what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take this rock, you're supposed to hold it close to your chest, you're supposed to sing to it, you're supposed to sleep next to it, you know, sort of like sleep with it like in a chest pocket or something. Basically like treat it like a baby. Treat this rock like your baby, and if you do well, you'll get to take care of a planet. And you also gotta give this rock a name. That's actually one of the most important things, that you gotta give the rock a name. Now, Agribel's main thing that he needs to worry about is that there are certain Bereshi set up as what are called trial setters. And the trial setters are people who sort of like occasionally ambush the rock guardian like trainee or whatever, and they'll try and like steal the rock from the Bereshi. And the big thing about the trial setters is that they're supposed to steal the rock and like give it back to Achelem or whatever Arch Bereshi is in charge of this. They're supposed to just steal the rock and give it back to the Arch Bereshi. However, this guy, we'll get to him in a minute. They're just supposed to steal the rock and give it back. Eventually, if you take good enough care of your rock, it will like turn into a planet. Like the rock will just turn into the planet, which you would then take care of. And so it's like, this is what Agribel did. He named his rock Uzmik, because it's an anagram of music, and like music is a big part of Planetary Lullabye. Uzmik becomes an adult, and then Agribel becomes like a planetary guardian of Uzmik. So that's like a big, important early moment of the story. Now we need to talk about... We've talked about Agribel and Doggo Nui. Doggo Nui's his best friend. And actually, you know a funny thing about Doggo Nui I should mention before we continue? Doggo Nui's like planet is like this sort of volcano-y planet. The moon of this planet is like a tennis ball shaped planet, which just like kind of has grass on it, and like the grass is like the only main source of life on that planet. So like Doggo Nui and Agribel like sort of just throw this moon back and forth like a tennis ball, and they can do that because it doesn't actually cause any danger to life on the planet. So you just throw a moon back and forth and play like fetch with it, basically. Irilef! This is the main messenger Bereshi at the time of Planetary Lullabye. Irilef is an anagram of Raphael. Now, Irilef, he carries messages from Thela, but of his personal choice, he chooses not to read the messages that he delivers. He chooses not to read the messages he delivers. He just asks Thela to put them on a tablet, and then he shows the tablet to Achelim, and that's basically how he delivers messages. Now, he does this because he read a prophecy one point. He's allowed to study the prophecies, and so he used to study the prophecies very well, and he used to go to a Bereshi college for them, basically. At one point, he came across a prophecy which mentioned him by name. And it said, Irilef will fight the Arch-Ubermesh. And Irilef did not finish reading, because he was scared of how it was going to end. And so ever since that day, Irilef refused to read any more prophecies. He just kind of delivered them without investigating them, without looking at them, without reading them. Now, Irilef's important, and we'll get to that in a minute. So, the catalyst is this guy right here named Laric. Now, Laric knows some of these prophecies too, and the prophecies basically state that a whole bunch of evil Bereshi are going to come around. They're going to be led by this guy named the Arch-Ubermesh, and they're going to, mess some stuff up. They're going to destroy stars. They're going to destroy planets. They're going to do all that. Now, Laric did not understand the point of trial setting when, it's been, a billion years and, none of this stuff has happened. And so Laric decides, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna, start a huge army of, death and destruction, go and destroy all stars and planets and stuff. And he's invested in this idea of what he calls bringing nothing. Bringing nothing is essentially destroying everything, but he says it in a fancy way so he sounds badass. He tries to sound more badass than he is by calling it bringing nothing, but he's basically just destroying everything. In order to do this, he needs an army. He needs an army of people who will be curious enough to see this macabre display of nothing. Who does he recruit to his army first? Well, of course, he recruits the other mirror parts of himself. These would be Chemel, Gravathon, Cladrau, Einalf, Sa'al, Kata and Nahash. They're sort of twins, sort of look very similar. Maybe this is Laric's true appearance, if this is the design that's copied over. Velathane, he's meant to have this sort of chameleon-like coat. I don't think I got that across very well. Lamech, he's this big juggernaut with 4 hatchets. Magog's kind of this shitty-looking one. He's got a butterfly-shaped face, and he has this crappy little fishing rod as his weapon. And then this is the most crappy one of Laric's mirror parts. This is Sajdu. Sajdu's a tiny, crappy little worm. That's Sajdu. So these are the 12 mirror parts of Laric. And he gets them all together and he decides, you know what, we're just going to do it. We're just going to be the bad guys now. We're just going to go out and try to destroy the entire 12-sided mirror. You guys with me? And it's Chemel himself. This is sort of the main struggle in sort of the villain sense is between Chemel and Laric. Gravithon has a little bit of this too. Gravithon's like reign over the Ubermesh is more focused on in like future stories, but like Chemmel and Lyric, their dynamic is sort of like the main villain crux of Planetary Lullabye. Because they both have this morbid curiosity. They both have a morbid curiosity. They both have a morbid curiosity which makes them want to see this nothing. But Chemmel's a little bit more strategic and tactical about it. Chemmel sort of has stuff that he does value, and so, although he is curious to see nothing, he would rather lose his valuable stuff last. Especially because a lot of that valuable stuff will aid in the quest to find nothing. Chemmel's kind of like a scientist as well. Like, he experiments with all sorts of macabre stuff that, like, the other Bereshi wouldn't agree with. So, like, for example, he has invented, like, sort of this mechanical tree that sucks sick blood out of void planets. It's this mechanical, like, tough as bedrock tree. He also gets his sapiens to dig bedrock and make, like, weapons of bedrock for him. And, like, the thing about, like, a Bereshi's will is that even if they're holding, like, a physical weapon, they can still make that grow and shrink with their will. So, like, if a sapien makes a physical weapon and then, like, Chemmel just, like, grows to, like, 20 stories high, that weapon will grow with him. It's just he'll also need will to make the weapon bigger, too. He also has, like, an antimatter factory. So that's nice. You know, antimatter, it makes big boom booms. And that's always nice. He also has this sort of obsidian, obsidian planetoid within his system. They call it the Obsidian Moon. And this sort of, like, Obsidian Moon contraption is sort of like this complicated mirror gate that filters Bereshi and Sapiens into, like, different prison cells if they go inside. So basically, he just preemptively designed a prison. And didn't tell the other Bereshi about it. But there's only one thing you can really do with a prison, and that's trap people in it. So yeah, this guy's kind of bad news. But, like, in a sense, he was responsible for creating a lot of the weapons and a lot of the artillery that the Ubermesh use. Both weapons of will, which are just, like, kind of formed from will, and physical weapons. One of Chemmel's main weapons, of course, he's got the very iconic, like, devil staff. But a very iconic weapon of Chemmel is the Bedrock Moon Chain. That's a planet, by the way. This right here is a planet. It's called Sin. And he got all the sapiens of this planet to make him a nice old bedrock chain. And when they made the bedrock chain, Chemmel took the bedrock chain, he stuck one end of it into a fucking moon, and now he's got a flail with a bedrock chain and a fucking moon on the end of it. So that's like Chemmel's big weapon. Lyric's big weapon. There's actually sort of a visual of this. Lyric's big weapon, which he constructs, is, you know, when they were forming the Ubermesh army, and this is like a big turning point in the book when you eventually get to it. As Lyric was building his army, he realized, hey, I didn't really care about being a planetary Bereshi that much. And also, I like this idea of destroying everything ever to be so fun. Let me rip my planet in half, fashion the core into the tip of a spear, and have this nice old weapon called the Emerald Spear. And that's Lyric's like main weapon of choice, is like the Emerald Spear. I can show it right here. That's the Emerald Spear. So you got a guy with a moon chain, you got a guy with an Emerald Spear. Grevithon's weapon is way too complicated to explain how they made it for the purposes of this video. And also, it was a Minecraft reference. And basically, what Grevithon's sword can do is she can, like, point it at a massive object of plasma, say a fucking star, and just throw it? The main reason she doesn't is because there's never a practical reason to do so, and every time she does, Lyric gets mad. Because, like, if Chemel's the tactician, and Lyric does so much stuff that pisses off Chemel because it's not tactical, if Grevithon does stuff that annoys Lyric with how illogical the decision was, throwing stars is one of them. It's like a cool weapon, but it's like, when are you ever going to need to do that? You'll either, like, throw the light away from, like, your battlefield that, like, you're currently on, or you're just gonna throw the star at the planet you're currently on. It's not gonna work. It only works if, like, big boys do it. Like, okay, maybe Grevithon's sword would actually be good in, like, the hands of, like, an Arch Bereshi, like Chemel, because, like, they could just, like, throw stars at, like, other systems or whatever. I mean, like, each of these guys have, like, their different personalities. Velathane's basically a Spamton ripoff. Einalf is, like, super dedicated to Lyric. He, like, really likes Lyric. Cladrow is the opposite. He really likes Chemel, but also he's kind of like a scholarly mirror part among them. Saul and Kata and Nahash's personalities are probably going to be fleshed out in, like, future 12-sided mirror projects. And then, like, these last ones right here, we'll get to them. We'll get to them. I will call them examples. And that kind of tells you what we're getting into. Okay. So there's our army. There's our army which has been built up. We have some debated leadership, but they're building up an army of Bereshi and Sapiens, evil Bereshi and evil Sapiens, or mainly just misguided Sapiens. They're building up all sorts of weapons and stuff. What are their first moves? Well, there's two first moves which they do. Number one, and actually, you know what? I might as well go ahead and explain it. I explained Agribel and Iroleph earlier. Lyric is set up as a rival to Agribel, and Chemel is set up as a rival to Iroleph. So one of the first things the Ubermesh do in like their army of villainy, like their first attack, their first assault, one of the first things they do is they strike an entire solar system run by this guy, Cherylebe. Now, it just so happens that Irilef was currently in the system of Cherylebe. I admit this is a little bit of a plot convenience, but Irilef was currently in the system of Cherylebe when the Ubermesh did their attack. Chemmel went to fight Cherylebe directly, while the others focused on the Planetary Bereshi. By the end of the battle, Chemmel was able to focus so much will, and this was like a hard thing. This is like a hard thing for people to do. Chemmel was able to focus so much will that he managed to make a massive mirror gate, an absolutely massive one, which sucked in the entire solar system of Cherylebe. And it brought the Bereshi, it brought the Sapiens, it brought the Crawlers, it brought them all to the Obsidian Moon prison. As for the planetoids, as for the star, they sort of crumbled on the transfer. So a lot of that just became like space dust, which then surrounded the system of Odotham. Did I explain why Chemmel named his system Odotham? Oh, no, I didn't. That's actually a very important thing. One of the big things Chemmel did that made the rest of the Bereshi not like him that much was he named his star Odotham. And Planetary Lullabye only briefly mentions this. And so I'll only briefly mention it here. He named the star Odotham after what is within the story a city of sapiens that took carnality by force. So, the other Bereshi thought it was very problematic that Chemmel would admire these people and want to name something after them. And they did give him chances to, like, change the name of his star, right? They gave him many chances to change the name of his star, and he didn't. And so what happened was that Odotham became like a black star, a black sackcloth star, and this made the star very hard to see in the night sky. So like it wouldn't be allowed to participate in like various holidays and stuff, Chemmel's system, until he changed the name of the star, and Chemmel refused to do that. So the interesting thing about the system of Odotham is, Laric's mirror parts came together and decided to work as one to bring forth this nothing, or whatever it's called. And interestingly enough, a lot of these guys were planetary Bereshi, and so what they did was they brought their planets. A lot of them brought their planets, which they were like guardians of, to the system of Odotham, to like surround the star as well, so they would become part of the system, so that they could essentially become planetary Bereshi in the all in like one place. There are a few exceptions. Einalf left his star, or not his star. Einalf left his planet where it was, because where Einalf's planet was in like Theswood Lev, and like there was some tactical reason to leave one of their planets in the system of Theswood, although Laric also destroyed his planet, which was in a different system of Theswood. So, I mean, there's that. And then the other exception is Velethane. Velethane held a planet called Money Sing, and he sold Money Sing. I can't remember what he gave it in exchange for. I think it was like a dung sandwich or something. So yeah, like Velethane just like sold his planet to a sapien. And we do see Money Sing later in Planetary Lullabye story. This isn't just a throwaway line. We do see Money Sing again. But like, yeah, he sold Money Sing. That's fun. I will mention a few of the. I think if I go to Planetary Lullabye visuals, this is 100% a spoiler, but like this shows you some of like the important worlds in the system of Odotham. I mean, this is very crude. This isn't exact. This is very crude. But like, there's a big salt planet. There's like a big salty looking planet. And like the big salty looking planet is kind of where the headquarters is set up. This was like, if I remember right, it was Magog's planet. And like he had a big palace set up on it, which Larrick just stole as like his own palace, basically. It was just Larrick's palace at that point from then on. Another important planet is the one where they made all the antimatter weapons. This eventually gets blown up. I don't think I'll go into detail about the side story where that gets blown up, but it gets blown up at some point. Which means that at that point they can't make any more antimatter weapons. There is a planet which has like been completely taken over by like this weird mechanical bedrock tree thing. In which like Irilef has to escape at one point. And then a pretty important planet is the planet of Sin. I'm pretty sure it's called Sin. And it's like this sort of like, yeah, it's a sort of like metal, like sandy planet, and this is like the planet where they mine for a lot of bedrock. This is like their big bedrock mine planet. And so this planet actually loses stability over time. The entire planet loses stability because of how much bedrock they mine. So after Cheryleb's system is taken, a very important character is taken at the same time. This is Emerald. Emerald is Emerald is a sapien. It's like a young adult sapien. And like, Irilef kind of has like a parent-child relationship with Emerald. So because Emerald gets kidnapped in the kidnapping of like that entire solar system, that does give Irilef a lot of like extra incentive to go save everyone, right? But also Irilef does have to escape Odotham after that whole thing happened. And like Chemel is kind of like relentless in pursuing him, but like the thing is, like, Chemel's like this massive creature, this massive like planet-sized creature, and he's trying to be this big to like intimidate Irilef. But like Irilef is so small that he manages to escape. And also Irilef's weapon is sort of like a diggy staff, for lack of a better term. Irilef's weapon is like a diggy staff, which he uses to dig into the earth. He's just like, he puts the tip to the earth and it like kind of like rapidly rotates and like shoots dirt out. So that's like, it's like he escapes and he runs to tell Agribel about like the threat of the Ubermesh. The other big thing that happens before like the plot really takes off for Planetary Lullabye is that Lyric, this is something that Lyric does kind of personally. Lyric takes it upon himself to, like, okay, so, like, he was teasing Agribel earlier in like, the story. And just because Lyric's petty, he goes into, like, the trial setter mode to, like, directly strike the planet of Uzmik. The rock of Uzmik at this point. It's a rock at this point in the story. And so, like, there's a whole sequence where Agribel and Dagonui have to protect Uzmik from Lyric. And they do. And a big reason they do is because, like, you know, Lyric was kind of doing this, but, like, Chemmel wanted to go do something else. I believe what Chemmel wanted to do was to go and, like, take that solar system that I mentioned earlier. But, like, Lyric wanted to do something else, and Lyric's like, but I play with my friends, and Chemmel's like, no, it's destroy the solar system time. So they go to destroy the solar system instead. That's kind of like a big setup. And of course, after all of this setup, Uzmik grows up. Uzmik becomes an adult, and Agribel takes his place as the planetary guardian of Uzmik. However, it's not very long after Uzmik grows up that Irilef comes to Theswood, and he says that that the Ubermesh has started, basically. He goes to Theswood and he says that people are Bereshi, certain evil, rebellious Bereshi, are trying to destroy planets and stars and stuff now. And they're taking prisoners and putting them in, like, this big obsidian prison. Now, Chemmel, the tactical genius he is, Chemmel decides to take the black plasma from his star and set it in orbit around the entire system of Odotham. Now that it's like this full sort of like weapons coven or whatever. Can I use this comparison of a Hamas terror tunnel that's just like completely hidden and you don't know where it is? And so this like blocks the vision of it even from like Soul of Moon and like the Emerald Eye. So what needs to happen is they need to get the fullness of Soul of Moon back. The Bereshi need to reunite the fullness of the Soul of Moon so that they can find Odotham. Because like separate, if the 12 gems are separated, that's not strong enough to see where Odotham is. But if the gems are together, there actually is like a very important part of this as well to how the reunited gems of Soul of Moon are able to find Odotham, and it's a little bit complicated, and I mean, like, you critics might say it's a little contrived as well, and you can say that. And we'll get to it in like a little bit. So where did I go from here next? Oh yeah, Irilef went before Achelam to say this, and so now Irilef needs 2 planetary Bereshi to assist him in the quest to find the 12 gems of Soul of Moon. To, like, sort of get them together and go save the day, and Agribel and Dagonui are the ones who step up. Now, Agribel does it a little bit fast, because, you know, of course, he has, like, a young adult planet that, like, you know, he would maybe want to be there for, but Agribel is passionate about this. Agribel is passionate that if there's someone out there who wants to hurt his Uzmik, that he would be there to stop them. And Doggo Nui comes along as well because Doggo Nui wants to make sure that Agribel's okay. He's a good friend to Agribel. So these three get together, and they go to get their mission briefing from Lady Hatoon. Now, Lady Hatoon is essentially a teacher at a Bareshi college, and this college is sort of like a Cloud City style, like, floating campus above a gas giant planet. It's like this big campus where like people go to learn. It's like Bible college, I guess. Now, as you can see, Lady Hatoon has these 4 sort of moons. These aren't technically moons. These are like capsules. These are like capsules which store 4 different actors who help Hatoon teach her lessons. And these actors are Wisdom and Valor, and then the other 2 actors are Folly and Cowardness. Now, these are actors. Folly and Cowardness aren't evil just because they portray, like, bad traits. It's just like, since they've been actors for, like, their entire existence as Bareshi, that's just sort of the names they go by. So you have Wisdom and Valor who teach, like, what someone should be like, and then you have Folly and Cowardness that represent common, like, failings that, like, someone might end up falling into. And they all sort of teach lessons. This all sort of help Lady Hatoon teach her lessons. Irlef, Agribel, and Doggo Nui go to Hatoon, Lady Hatoon, and she gives them their mission briefing. I will read it. I will actually read, like, the little riddle she says about Soul of Moon. And by the way, the thing I explained earlier about, like, Soul of Moon being Soul of Moon, that's actually, like, a really big plot twist, and that's why it's spelled differently right here. Like, okay, so it's spelled Soul of Moon here, and there's, like, a big running joke throughout the book that Irlef keeps spelling Soul of Moon's name wrong because it's a book and you can spell them. So, like, it's spelled like but it's supposed to be SOL of MUHN, Soul of Moon, right? The Guardian of the Greater Light. So Irlef, Agribel, and Doggo Nui go to Lady Hatoon. And then she sings this song to them. Soul of mass, soul of will. Soul of both, may it will. Soul won't die, soul won't break. Soul will meet blessed fate. Soul is split, soul is 12. Soul takes on rounded shell. Soul is 12, soul is whole, where you'll find parts of soul. Split in fight, split in war, split to have song of lore. Soul is where, soul is when, soul was back when begin. Soul of lights, moon and soon, soul of light, soul of moon. Soul of moon, find the moon, where you'll find soul of moon. Go there, go there, go there, go there. Go there, go there, go there, there, there. Go there, go there, go there, go there. Go there, go there, go there, there, there. So that's sort of like a riddle that's supposed to get you to, like, think about what the nature of these MacGuffins they're searching for are. So, like, and she'll be an important character later on, of course. A lot of the first few adventures of the gang, of this gang, are to set up characters who appear later, especially the next adventure, because the next adventure is kind of light. The next adventure is sort of like takes place in the climax of the Bionicle storyline, where they go to the planet of Spherus Magma and have to survive the reforming of Spherus Magma. And there they meet the planetary guardian of Spherus Magma, which is actually oh yeah, I remember she wasn't in this segment. She was actually in this segment. The planetary Bereshi of where is it? Man, where? Man, where is she? I don't see her. Oh, she's right here. So the planetary Bereshi of Spherus Magma is actually Werathon, and so as you can see, like I sort of have the 3 circles right here. I have 3 circles in her face too, which are eyeballs. And then she has like these hands, which are shaped like Bionicle hands, and so yeah, so basically Agrabah, Irilef, and Taco Nui go to Spherus Magma during its reforming to like survive it and find one of the Soul Moon. Meanwhile, Chemel and Lyric are discussing who gets to be like the top dog. Chemel and Lyric, and really it's sort of like all 12 of Lyric's mirror parts. All 12 of Lyric's mirror parts eventually have the big battle to decide which of them gets to be top dog. Without going into too much detail, Lyric wins by sort of like tying Chemel and like 9 others into like this massive bind. Like, so all of them that are not Lyric and Grevathon all sort of get like caught in like this magic bind thing that Lyric made. It's like I can't go into too much detail because like it requires vast explanations that are given in the book itself. And then like he sends them all through a portal to the core of Spherus Magna, so that they fall into the energized protodermis and get mutated. And then Grevathon is like the last one to be taken care of. The reason I did it this way is because I wanted the imagery of like the 10-headed dragon that eventually loses 3 of its heads. And I mean, some people might know what that's a reference to. Lyric then sends Grevathon through a different portal, and this portal takes Grevathon to the fucking antimatter factory they had, and she crashes into the antimatter factory and she blows it up. And she's gone now because Lyric had to win. And so after this, this scene is kind of a reference to the Mark of Cain from the Bible. Basically what happens is that there is now a mark placed on Lyric. There are 11 marks placed on Lyric, and these 11 marks are the 11 names of the 11 other mirror parts of him. And basically, these marks declare that if any one of these guys were to try and like strike Lyric to death, or like, well, death is kind of complicated for Bereshi because like you have to go after the core, and the core is kind of like a hard thing to like break. And like even then, it's usually just the Ubermesh who go after the core. Like the regular Bereshi don't really mess with that. But like if a Bereshi, if any of these 11 Bereshi were to try and strike Lyric to death, then the Cain mark will activate, and then like one of these 11 Bereshi will just cease to exist at that point. So after Chemmel and all his mates get thrown into the core of Spherus Magma, they turn into like this 10-headed dragon. And they just missed Agribel, Irilef, and Dagonui. I get it. It's another plot contrivance, really. But like Irilef, Agribel, and Dagonui are now going after like the second Soul of Moon. And they end up at this planet called Sheriko, and like I feel like I wanted this to be a very atmospheric world, and so it's got like these massive like train railways that like run over cities. It's got like these upside down pyramid things, and like high in the sky is like this massive blue moon, and then like this entire time, like, this 10-headed Chemmel is, like, chasing them down. And it's like this monster where they don't even really understand what they're looking at. Now, and like, so much stuff happens during this. Like, I think Chemmel gets hit by a train at one point, and he still keeps chugging. Eventually, Chemmel gives them so much trouble that they cause the moon, the big blue moon in the sky, they cause that moon to come down to Earth and smash down right on top of Chemmel, just to like stop him from pursuing them. Turns out this massive moon was actually the second Soul of Moon. So they get that. It shrinks down to like a point where they can like carry it around, so they take it. And they go. And that was that whole segment. So after this, as you may guess, the mirror parts of Lyric are a little pissed. Because they're now like suddenly like a 10-headed dragon that they can't really escape from. They don't know how to escape from this like massive form that they now found themselves in. And one of them, I'm pretty sure it was Lamech, it might have been Magog. But it's like Lamech is like super pissed that Lyric did this, and he takes control of the mass and he tries to directly strike Lyric, but hey, Lyric has the cane mark. So Lamech just ceases to exist at that point. Like, the other ones are fine, because, like, they weren't in control of the mass at that point, but Lamech's just gone now. He's gone. He doesn't exist anymore. Bye-bye. All gone. So that's kind of the second moon. So now we get into the climax of Book 1. And really, the climax is kind of like on the Ubermesh side of things, because what the good guys, Irilef, Agribel, and Dagonui, what they do is they go to this planet. This planet is guarded by the Bereshi known as currently unnamed. That is not a statement of the character not having a name. The character has a name, and its name is currently unnamed. So they go to this planet, and there's like a small little anthill that they go into, and they get to shrink down and like go in an anthill, so we get to see like the small scale of things. And like they meet this character named Nalma. Now Nalma was entrusted with watching over one of the Soul of Moon. However, she's kind of become like distrustful of the Bereshi over time. And so like she kind of like refuses to give it back at first. There is like a fight sequence against her, and it's like whatever. I'm not super proud of the way Nalma turned out as a character. I will admit that. I feel like it might have been one of the weaker parts of Planetary Lullabye. I still like this character design, though, and sort of the humor entailed with this design. Nalma's the Arabic word for ant. So, I mean, there's that. Eventually, because like Nalma and Irilef are old friends. Eventually, the two of them like make amends. She hands over the Soul of Moon. Oh, if I remember right, it was sort of a deal where she would live for as long as she was keeping watch over the Soul of Moon, right? She would like be alive for as long as she was watching over the thing. And like she's getting old, so like her body kind of hurts and like she has trouble standing up and stuff like that, but she still wants to hold on to the Soul of Moon because she's just that afraid of death. And it's like a natural thing that comes to people, but to her she's just so afraid of it that she's willing to like put herself through like this bodily torture to survive it. And eventually like she and Irilef come to an agreement that Irilef will not take the Soul of Moon from her until she is ready. But Irilef will send her to go stay at Hatun's college for a while, so she can like learn that it's like okay to let go of her mortal life, right? And she can kind of be like prepared for what the future of her soul has to offer, essentially. It's one of those things that I'm not like super proud of the way I wrote it. I feel like this scene could have been a lot better, and I mean like this is one of the few sapient characters in Planetary Lullabye, and like I just don't know if this one worked out that well. And by the way, like technically this is a sapien. Like she's a queen of ants, but like the ants are all crawlers, but she's like a very special type of like ant-like creature that's actually more in line with like what a sapien is. So there's that. So the real climax was on the Ubermesh side of things. And they were like, okay, we took down a solar system. What's the logical next step? Oh, I know. I know what the logical next step is. Let's go and steal the thing where all of the prophecies come from. That'll help us with our tactics and stuff, right? That would be cool. Let's go steal it. So they go to fight the giant lion creature, which is like 50 billion times the size of the average Archbareshi. And like, I wouldn't be surprised that this one battle took them like millenniums to like just climb. Because basically what happens is that the Ubermesh get like an army. Lyric goes in front, and like the Ubermesh army follows behind him. And they just like climb the lion. They go to where his void is and they just climb him. At first they're like, oh, he doesn't notice us. He's just staring straight off into space. He knew they were there the whole time. He has visions of the future with his connection to the Emerald Eye. So like, he kind of knew where they were. He was just looking off into space because he didn't have to turn his head. But then he decided to turn his head anyway when like Lyric was like up at like shoulder height. He like decided to turn his head and look at Lyric. It's like, that's cute. And then he roars, and as he roars, it like pushes the entire Ubermesh army back to the portal. So like the Ubermesh have no treat, but the Ubermesh have no choice but to retreat back into the portal. But Lyric holds on. Lyric is able to hold on for so long, and he's like, what can I do to get away from the lion? And he's like, oh, I know. I have this Harry Potter invisibility cloak power. This is something I kind of established but didn't really explain earlier. Is that like Lyric kind of has like a cloak. His wings are kind of like a cloak-like structure that he can like sort of put over himself. And if he does this, he'll blend in fairly well with the void of space. And so he's like, I know, I'll do that to hide from the lion that can see the future. And so Lyric does that, and it doesn't really fool the lion. But the lion's also like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to let him go to the Orb of Prophecy. And so Thela lets Lyric go to the Orb of Prophecy, knowing quite well he was there the whole time. And so Lyric kind of lands on this thing. It's kind of like a big planet under his feet. And so like he goes around it, tries to find the opening. He finds the opening, goes in the opening. He swirls around in these blue and green clouds of past and future information, and it's all like this overwhelming mess that gives him a headache. And eventually, he reaches the Emerald Eye. So this is like a capsule. This whole thing right here is like a capsule with the Emerald Eye inside it. I don't know if I explained that very well. This is a capsule with the Emerald Eye inside it. And the Emerald Eye is producing like these blue and green clouds of future and past. And like there is like a hatch that like opens up on this, and when it does, like lightning comes out of it, and it can like sort of write words on tablets. So when Lyric meets Soul of Moon, the Emerald Eye, Soul of Moon kind of like calms things down so that Lyric can kind of understand what's going on. And Soul of Moon tells Lyric that like Thela knows where he is right now. And like both Soul and Thela just let Lyric escape with the Emerald Eye. They just let Lyric escape. Now, why would they do that? That's something to think about. That's something to think about. But as of that, we are now done with the first book of Planetary Lullabye. A lot of Planetary Lullabye is exposition. It's like the setting up of Lyric's army, Lyric and Chemel's army, I guess I should say. It's setting up Agribel, it's setting up Irilef, it's setting up a lot of the main characters. It's mostly set up and a little bit of adventure to give you a taste of what's going to appear in like the next book. Book 2 is probably the smallest book. The writings of the Record Keeper, since the day her master told her of these things, were split into 3 sections. This is the end of the first section. By now, the Sapiens and Crawlers should be in their sanctuaries with their guardians. At least one Bereshi should be at each core gate, and the rest should be with the Sapiens. Rest your instruments and have the Arch-Bereshi speak words pertaining to the life of the star. Okay, so this is part of the star funerals. I guess I could have maybe explained sanctuaries a little bit better, and I feel obligated to now that mentioned it. So sanctuaries in Planetary Lullabye, I think I have a good visual of what one sanctuary looks like in... Hang on. Oh no. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. A sanctuary. I'll go find what I think was like a sanctuary picture down here. I might not be able to find one. I don't know. I don't really feel like I found one. Sanctuaries are basically like big churches that like all the Sapiens and Crawlers get into during the star funeral, so like they can leave. They're these massive places which were built by giant humans There are actually like giant sapiens. Sometimes I get sapiens and humans mixed up when like I'm talking about this because like there technically are different things. But like there are giant sapiens referred to as Nitsa in the Planetary Lullabye story, the 12-sided mirror lore. And basically the first Nitsa were made to like be um sanctuary builders, and they would build the sanctuary, which is like this massive temple church that sapiens and crawlers get into before a star funeral. And then that sanctuary is moved somewhere else, as are the stars and the cores of planetoids, and the sanctuaries just go to like different planets. Just like different planets of like nearby star systems that don't have dying stars in them. Um, of course, there are descendants of Nitsa, and there's like Nitsa for every species as well. There's like Nitsa humans, and then there's like Nitsa Lazurites and Nitsa Emeraldians, which Emerald was an Emeraldian, so he wasn't a Nitsa, but he was an Emeraldian. So I mean, like, I didn't feel like I needed to explain that, but I guess I did. So I hope that explains like at least part of Planetary Lullabye to you guys. I feel like Planetary Lullabye is such a complex series that I mean it's the 12-sided mirror in general is just like a really there's a lot to unpack with it, and like I feel like even in just explaining it it's a little hard. Oh well. I guess before we end the video, I could show you guys some of these weapons. Gravithon's sword, the Emerald Spear, Chemo's staff, the Moon Chain. I'll let you guys pause and read these bios if you want. Some of these are weapons that we haven't seen yet. Also, I think one of these is a lie. The purpose of these is revealed during the events of the third lullaby. That's a lie. The purpose was not revealed. I did not reveal what the purpose of the rings were. I completely forgot to do that. Some of these are spoilers, I guess. Like, the pickaxe, shovel, and sword are definitely spoilers. And Warathon's sword is a very similar thing to these guys. Oh, and I like how I didn't even put a bio for Soul of Moon's, like, big torch thing he has. Okay, cool. Okay, I guess I could explain one more fun fact. One more fun fact about one of these characters. So you'll notice, if I go to Irolef, like he's got an H in his mouth. A big character quirk I wanted to do for like Irolef. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but like his eyes are basically upside down lyric eyes, so you can do with that what you will. But the H in Irolef's mouth. One of my character quirks for Irolef was that as he spoke, different letters would sort of like appear in his mouth. And it'd go kind of fast as he talked, but like basically as he spoke, it would sort of like spell the word that he was saying. So like And I mean, like, this ties into the whole joke of, like, oh, you spelled Soul of Moon wrong because you spelled it SOUL space OF space MOON. It ties into that a little bit as well. I never, like, directly explain it, but that's, like, sort of my idea of the character. Doggo Nui. Doggo Nui is precious. Alright, well, I love you guys. I need to sleep. I need to go to sleep.